Welcome to the first session of the morning, Restructuring Your Business, Staying Relevant in a New Business Environment. Please welcome the moderator for this session, Patricia Mota, President and CEO of ACE, Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. COVID has changed a lot about our world dramatically, and we're going to talk about how business owners have made some serious adjustments to these changes. In this session, you'll learn about Latina-owned businesses have restructured their businesses to continue to operate and the resources that are making it possible. Restructuring your business, succeeding in the new environment. And so I'm going to introduce our panel by asking them to each take a few minutes and introduce themselves. Welcome to our first panelist. I'll start with Patty Juarez.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. I think it's morning for most of us. It's so great to be here, Patricia. Thank you for the kind introduction. I am Patty Juarez. I'm Executive Vice President and Head of Diverse Segments for Wells Fargo's commercial banking area. I've been with the bank 26 years, and I'm proud to say that the majority of my career I've devoted to helping small businesses achieve their financial goals. Certainly this last 18 months have been unprecedented, with heavy impact in our minority communities and especially our Latino business owners, because we are the fastest growing. We're obviously being impacted at a more pronounced rate as well. But we're here today to share a lot of resources and tips and advice on what programs are out there for our Latina business owners to access. And it's with great pride that we support our Latino business owners at Wells Fargo. Their success is our success.
Gracias, Patty. I also have Yvette Trevino.
There you go. Good morning. Thank you, Patricia. Just really quickly again, super agradecida with Lupita and Robert. Thank you so much for the invitation to join this panel and really just focus on small minority-owned businesses and the different programming and assistance that is out there to help them. So a little bit about me. My name is Yvette Trevino. I serve as the Executive Director at the Little Village Chamber of Commerce. I'm a proud alumni to the Mujeres de ACE program. I also sit on the Advisory Council on Women for the City of Chicago. Previously, I spent and dedicated about 14 years working at the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, where I was still able to connect with small businesses, provide support, access to capital, access to technology, and community. So a little bit about Little Village really quickly. So some of you might know, some of you might not already know, but Little Village is the second most important business corridor in the city of Chicago, generating over $900 million in revenue. There's over 500 small businesses in Little Village. So you can imagine all the technical assistance and resources that the community desperately needs here. The business corridor is filled with family-owned restaurants, barbershops, beauty salons, barbershops, grocers, and small retail shops. As far as the Little Village Chamber of Commerce, we represent the interests of the local businesses here in Little Village. Our mission is to support, promote, and advocate for small businesses and provide them with technical assistance while still keeping their Mexican culture very relevant and being able to connect and just do some community engagement. So thank you again for letting me participate in this panel. I look forward to answering all sorts of questions as it relates to small business and community engagement. Thank you.
Gracias, Yvette. We have Blanca Berthier.
Yes, hi, Patricia. Good morning, everyone. And thank you to the Latina Style team for having me. So I currently serve as the Managing Director for Entrepreneurial Services for the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago. We have several offices in the Midwest and 3 actually in the Chicago area. One of them in our at the Little Village Chamber of Commerce in Richton Park and in the Aurora area. So I'm happy to be here and be part of this panel that is so relevant in this time. So thank you again.
Thank you, Blanca. And Tammy Gay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Patricia. My name is Tammy Gay, and I'm a Senior Stakeholder Liaison with the Internal Revenue Service. As a Senior Stakeholder Liaison, I collaborate and inform priority outreach messages to all taxpayer community. I've been with the Internal Revenue Service since 2008. My career started in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, where I held several call site positions, and then I moved to the wonderful state of Illinois, where I held various positions with the Taxpayer Advocate Service, including Group Manager. Please remember, you don't need to be afraid of the IRS. We are customer service focused, and we are here to help. If you owe, we have many options for you to pay. If you receive a notice, don't ignore it and respond as soon as possible. Also, the IRS is currently providing advanced child tax credit payments to those individuals that are eligible. You can always visit irs.gov for information on all your federal tax needs. I'm very excited to be the Senior Stakeholder Liaison representing the IRS today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. We have Juanita Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juanita Rodriguez. I'm very happy to be part of the panel and to have been invited to speak as a lawyer. I've been a lawyer here in Chicago since 2005. I studied and I was born and raised here in Chicago, Illinois. My areas are business and employment law. I advise across a number of industries. In the areas of business and employment law, I have also had experience being in-house, and I know very well what businesses face internally and generally from an operation standpoint. I've been able to interact with not only in that in-house role, but across a number of industries that are my clients. So I am the owner of JBR Law Group here in Chicago. I started that firm in 2017. I'm the only Latina that owns a business and employment law boutique in the city of Chicago, which is, it's something that I wish there was a little bit more of. I try to stay in touch with the local law schools and mentor those that come through my door or who I have the opportunity to cross paths with. But my practice involves being in state and federal court, not just locally, but sometimes across the U.S. I've handled also business transactions that are not just local, but international. I've had the opportunity to understand where in business contracts the hangups can be, because I also have seen that in the context of having to litigate, commercial disputes. In the context of employment law, I'm happy to be able to advise, and I have a lot of Latino-owned businesses that I'm able to provide services to, because if I was in a very large firm, my rates would be much higher. So in that context, I've been able to proudly support a lot of entrepreneurs and see them really grow and be able to safeguard their businesses. So it's something that I like to be able to advise on. So thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel.
Thank you, Juanita. And so we'll stick with you to answer this first question. And as everyone joining us here today can see by this panelist, we have a wealth of knowledge here. And so I encourage you to start thinking of any questions or that you may have, whether we get to them today or whether you reach out to any of these ladies later at another time, right? We want to make sure that we become a resource and available for one another. So Juanita, the first question being is, what is one of the greatest challenges that you've seen for Latina entrepreneurs?
Sure, I'll answer that. I just don't know if Blanca was actually introduced. I don't know if I missed that.
So yes, I was Juanita, thank you.
Okay, all right, I apologize. Okay, so your question is what are the biggest challenges that I've seen faced during this time frame? Is that the question?
Yeah, the greatest challenges that you've seen, either the folks that you're working with have
Sure.
faced within the last.
Yeah, well, it's on the business side and the employment side. So I'll first talk about the business side. On the business side, there could be a number of agreements that kind of make our world go round, and everyone has to understand what the agreements are that are fundamental to their business. And so because there was a lot of folks just staying home and kind of the business world in many industries kind of like hit the brakes and the workforce was staying home, that doesn't mean that contractual obligations also decided to give themselves a little rest and write into your agreements something that allows some kind of protection for your business to still be in place when you go back to work. And so in that respect, a lot of folks didn't pay attention to the fact that there were still obligations under their contracts that they had to comply with, that maybe there were some timing, for example, specifically when it deals with timing elements, right? Sometimes you have contracts that say that time is of the essence. That means that it has to happen by the deadline specified, because if not, you're either not going to get paid or there's going to be some serious damages or consequences as a result. So a lot has dealt with on the business side, evaluating, being able to go back to the table to sometimes renegotiate, not just to get an extension, but to try to come up with a better plan so that you can continue to do business. And sometimes that even had to do with, that can be vertical or horizontal. You could be dealing with your own suppliers or anything like that. And you have to be able to then try to find a way to allocate the risk, if you will. So that is something that whether you're dealing with subcontractors or again, other types of vendor agreements, and it's going to possibly cause you to delay through no fault of your own, you have to evaluate those kind of things and find a way to get ahead of it and not wait until you're in default. So that's one challenge that I've seen, that I've been able to work with my clients on or help them maybe negotiate agreements like lease agreements. Maybe they needed to try to find a way to deal with the fact that now they were in default. They couldn't really pay the rent for their office space, right? I mean, a lot of these things were very real. And then you have to still deal with them in a contractual way. And you have to understand what your contracts say. And you have to try to be creative and resourceful to check out what, navigate what your remedies are. So that's on the business side. On the employment law side, there's been a lot in terms of compliance because it's continued to change. What is and isn't okay in the workforce? Employment law is ever evolving, and it definitely keeps me busy, and it definitely keeps me being a student at all times, and very much so a practitioner in every letter of that word. So employment law is constantly evolving, and it's become even more of a challenge for employers, despite the fact that there's a paycheck protection program and things like that. The law didn't decide to back up and say, well, never mind about those increasing minimum wage laws around the corner, or never mind about complying with the US Department of Labor or OSHA or anything like that. But also how tricky it's been just to deal with the pandemic and a lot of folks that are working remotely from home, and the fact that you have to control things so that you don't end up with an overtime violation, right? So that's where things got tricky when you had non-exempt employees that are going to be working from home. Does that mean that if they're on call, that you got to pay them around the clock? Like, that's where you have to make sure that you get advice, that you have proper written policies. And so in that context, it was a challenge because we didn't know how long this shutdown was going to be. I mean, for myself, even as an employer, I felt too that it was a big challenge to try to figure out, well, when do I say come back to the office? And thankfully, I mean, my team is smaller now than when I went before the pandemic, but I can't imagine employers that have hundreds of employees and how they manage and making the decisions so that they can kind of preserve capital and whatnot. So being able to understand the risks so that you can navigate around them from an employment law standpoint is super important, because you don't want to deal with having to pay additional liquidated damages and double or triple the amount that you owe at, at the federal or state or even local level. So there's different layers of compliance when we look at those factors of, and sectors of government. So
there's a lot there,
Juanita.
Juanita. There's a lot there. So I will ask, in the essence of time, that my other panelists, if they have anything to add. But just to summarize, we talked about ensuring that you don't hide away from our contractual obligations, and make sure that we're anticipating, that we're communicating, we're asking for help, seeing what can be done, and saying, I can't do this, I'm just going to hide and put it aside, right? Because it will get worse, right, over time. So anticipation. And then in terms of the employment law, I mean, that's a hefty one, right? There's a lot of factors, and depending on your business and the industry, a lot that changed this last year. And I would ask each of our panelists if there's anything to add on to what Juanita said, because we want to get to the solutions. We want to hear what are some of the resources out there. And so, Tammy, is there anything that you'd like to add on?
Yes, there is. I would say that one of the greatest challenges that entrepreneurs have had with the IRS is the ability to get a question answered due to our phone lines. There are extremely long wait times with processing tax returns as well. But I do want the business owners to remember that on irs.gov, there is a small business owners tax information for business owners site. So if they go to the irs.gov website and search for that, they'll get a lot of good information. It'll help them with preparing their taxes, filing and paying on time, how to make the estimated tax payments, and how to start and operate a business. So irs.gov is definitely going to be the resource that they'll want to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. Blanca, anything to add?
Yes, I think, this will be mentioned during the whole day, right? But I think the pandemic has shook our small business owners in a way that nothing ever has done like this before. I think, many of our clients thought, oh, well, this is a bad flu, right? We'll shut the shop in a week or two, and then we'll be back. And I think that the major challenge to all our entrepreneurs has been how to live in this new reality, and then how can I prepare my business, right, for the future? Because the reality is that maybe things will be different, or we will have to pivot and do things differently now. And I think what Juanita mentioned is one of the biggest challenges across the board is being prepared and compliant in every aspect of their businesses. Because as we all know, these are small business owners running their business on a day-to-day basis. They do everything, right? And sometimes the priority is to run their business, but then there's that other part of keeping, track of the, laws, accounting practices, bookkeeping. So I think this has revealed the need to do that. And the good thing is that we have a lot of resources, in this group and outside of this group, that we can provide our business owners to help them through this, maybe better practices to be prepared for any future contingencies like this one, right? So
thank you, Blanca. Yvette, how about you? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Blanca and Juanita. I also just, one of the biggest challenges that small businesses faced was access to capital, which, Blanca touched upon a little bit. Making sure that businesses were prepared to apply for some of the pandemic relief funds. Latinos in general were probably a very small percentage of business owners that actually applied and were able to secure any kind of pandemic relief. So I definitely will include my contact information in the chat, especially now with the new Back to Business program that was just launched. There's still an opportunity for small businesses who haven't received any kind of pandemic relief for them to apply. And, organizations like Blanca with the WBDC or myself as the Little Village Chamber of Commerce, We are all there to be able to help and walk small businesses through the process on getting that access to capital, helping them fill out the applications, making sure that their financials are in order, which has been one of the biggest problems and challenges is, do small businesses have their financials in order and ready and prepared to apply for any kind of pandemic relief? So happy to talk more about Back to Business in a little bit, but it is a new grant that's available to small businesses, and it opens next week. So there's still plenty of funds up and opportunities to receive some of that pandemic relief.
Thank you, Yvette. And access to capital is a beautiful segue to Patty Juarez, right, Patty? What would you add in terms of representing a financial institution as some of the challenges that you've seen from your perspective?
Thank you, Patricia. I agree with my fellow panelists. This has been a really tough time, but I think accessing resources and tapping organizations that are providing assistance is really a key thing that business owners need to seek out. We at Wells Fargo have a small business center for those business owners that have had to pivot in this pandemic. Some of them have really completely changed their business plans, right? So we need to maybe rewrite business plans, project cash flows. We have all of those tools free for our business owners to be accessed through our small business center on wellsfargo.com. And so please do take advantage of the tools that either financial institutions, the SBA, the IRS, all organizations are really, striving to assist business owners so that they can really survive and recover from this pandemic. And we have probably more to come, right? A more prolonged impact. And so that would be my advice. In addition to those of you that did access the PPP programs, please complete your forgiveness applications. These are, loans that were made that become grants if you submit all the required paperwork, right, to forgive that debt. And so we still have a lot of our customers that haven't submitted, right? Their forgiveness applications are in the process of submitting. So I would say, really focus on the things that are going to have a positive impact in your liquidity. And that's really important in this time.
Thank you, Patty. A lot that's, one of the top challenges, and there's a study done by the Aspen Institute Latinos in Society program on entrepreneurship. And the number one challenge that was the increased need of access to capital, and specifically right-sized capital in the form of equity, debt, or a combination that matches the businesses at various stages in their growth, right? So depending on where they are. The second was the ability to access and capitalize on important procurement and supply chain opportunities that foster growth. And the third one, which was also in terms of the top three that was touched on throughout some of the responses that we heard from our panelists, was the availability of relevant, culturally competent, and convenient business training solutions and education. And so as I pivot here, because we're talking about pivoting and adapting, we want to focus on what are some of the resources, the tools, the opportunities. And so Patty, I want to start with you, and we have other questions for the panelists, but this one is, how have financial, adding on to what you just said, institutions responded to the new need of entrepreneurs?
Yes, it's very important that we all do our part. I think that's the first thing I want to say. We all have to be responsible and really assist the communities that are in most need. Here at Wells Fargo, how we did that is we became very proactive in, being an active lender for the PPP program. We did over 200,000 loans. And by the way, we really focused on serving the small business segment of the population, especially minority communities, right, that have been impacted the hardest. The majority of our borrowers had 10 employees or less. And the average size of our loan was $54,000. So that really, just zeroes in on really being proactive and, attempting to serve the business that needed our help the most. And so what we did, then we made $400 million from our SBA partners, right, for processing those hundreds of thousands of loans. And what we did, we put all of the proceeds from our PPP loans into what we call the Open for Business Fund. And what we did is we gave those monies away to organizations that are very well positioned to help business owners, particularly African American business owners and Latino business owners who were hit the hardest and accessed those programs in the smallest percentages. And so what we did is we partnered up with CDFIs. We have a list on our website if you want to see who accessed our proceeds from Open for Business. That is money that is readily available for smaller businesses, right? Because CDFIs have less stringent parameters in terms of lending. And so those CDFI partners are now ready to deploy capital at very low interest rates because we have made grants to them to access. And so that's one way in which we help. The other was to provide technical assistance programs to the business owners out there who were either pivoting or changing or had real liquidity crises. We provided a lot of technical assistance. For instance, somebody decided, oh, well, I can't sell at my storefront, so I'm going to sell online, right? So how do I set up an online store and do, take payments and all that? So technical assistance is really important when so many businesses are pivoting. And lastly, a very important piece of the funding is going to recovery and resilience, right? We want to support the businesses to continue to grow, to get through this pandemic and to survive, right? There's so many businesses, over 30% of businesses have shut down, small businesses. I mean, like that's a huge amount of businesses. And of course that we're going to be very well represented, right? Latina business owners, because we're the fastest growing. And so when you look at that, it's very obvious to us that we need to focus on providing recovery and resilience programs to these business owners. Partner with organizations that are there to provide either grants, to provide assistance, to provide, survival skills so that businesses can see another day and get through this pandemic. So what I would say is access the resources. It's not just Wells Fargo that's out there providing these fantastic resources to business owners. There's a lot of organizations that are really trying to help. And so it can be an overwhelming thing to know where to start. But what I would say is just, get organized, take a look at your resources, maybe partner with your Chamber of Commerce who really, will really know about the programs that are out there. And then we can all, be part of the recovery, which is exciting. And I would say that from a Latina business owner standpoint, our Latinas are incredibly resilient. And so if I had to bet on who's going to lead us out of this pandemic, I bet it's Latinas.
I bet on that too, Patty. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I see we have some questions. We'll get ready to address those at the very end. So feel free to, if you want to include them on the chat now or when we open it up. And so my next question to continue to add on to that, Yvette, how has your organization, the Little Village Chamber of Commerce, been able to assist entrepreneurs during this time?
Yeah, so we provide a lot of one-on-one technical assistance, something that, Patty just talked about. It's having that one-on-one connection with the business owner and really getting to understand what their issues are, where their problems are, where can we be of assistance and help them grow and scale their business. We've been helping folks with PPP, EIDL, and now the Back to Business grant, also connecting small businesses with our banking partners. So really fun fact, Little Village has over 14 banks just on a 2-mile stretch. So that speaks volumes of the economic opportunities that Little Village contributes to the city and to the state as a whole. But really focusing on that one-on-one interaction with our business and understanding where there may be areas of growth and where we can support and advocate on their behalf. We've taken a very serious approach to grassroots and reaching out and walking the business corridor. Sometimes businesses are busy doing work, right? They're, handing the front end of their business, the back end of their business, that it doesn't give them opportunity to venture out and speak and ask for help. So we're actually mobilizing and hitting the streets and walking the business corridor, visiting with business owners, but most importantly, we're building relationships. And as Latinos, we don't trust easily. So it's all about building a relationship with the small businesses. And then they'll tell you, you know what, I need help with workforce. I need help with access to capital. I need to upgrade my technology. I need assistance with merchant services. I need to digitize my business. And that's where we kind of mobilize and create a plan. And the goal is to be seen as an extension of their team.
Thank you, Yvette. How about for you, Blanca, at the WBDC?
Yes, very similar to what Yvette just mentioned. We provide assistance in many ways. Advising, no-cost business advising. We provide group counseling as well. We offer a vast array of training programs. We put together specific workshops since the pandemic hit to educate our clients on what they could do, or keep learning, keep acquiring tools. Workshops on how the PPP worked, the EIDL, and now the new Back to Business grant. So, but besides that, I wanted to mention just one very specific program that we designed right at the hit of the pandemic. It's called Plan for Recovery. And we actually designed this 6-week plan so that businesses could actually make a very good assessment of their current situation, how the pandemic hit them, and then analyze their strengths, their weaknesses, and their opportunities, and then design an action plan to move forward with tools and with new ideas. I think Patty mentioned, if they had a storefront and they had to shut down, how can they maybe use their strengths to put that on a digital platform? So that's where we come in and try to help them figure out new ways, new markets, or just, how they can access resources and tools to move forward. So, and if you need more information, I'm sure the information will be out there, but we have that Plan for Recovery plan, which is very specifically directed to clients hit by the pandemic.
Thank you, Blanca. And Tammy, what would you add in terms of the resources that are being provided by the IRS?
During this time, the IRS was able to provide entrepreneurs e-learning resources. We offered live webinars in English, Spanish, and most recently, Chinese. Some areas also provided workshops. We also educated the community by providing information in other languages, such as our news releases and social media platforms. The federal government enacted several new laws that provided tax relief and assistance to businesses impacted by coronavirus. Some allow for an immediate dollar-to-dollar tax offset against payroll taxes to help pay for employee sick leave, and some are designed to help keep employees on their payroll. We are also assisting business owners in determining if the business is likely to qualify for one or more of the tax relief options currently available. The IRS created a web application to assist businesses. It's called COVID-19 Business Tax Relief Tool. If they visit irs.gov, they can find more information on that. And we also encourage business owners to subscribe to our e-news for small business newsletter. It allows them to receive important information and updates designed for small business owners and self-employed individuals. When they visit the irs.gov website, they'll search the term e-news and select e-news for small business and any other newsletters of their choice. We do have news.
Thank you, Tammy. And you hit on something key too, right? On the language piece, which I know one of our attendees mentioned the importance, and it is one of the biggest challenges, right? In terms of that culturally relevant and cultural competent type of training, and language is one of them. And so good to hear that. And I know like LVCC, offers in Spanish, a lot of our chambers do, and other resources. So thank you. Juanita, anything to add in terms of how you help the entrepreneurs during this time?
Okay, so it's just basically been being able to be here to help answer questions or provide guidance depending on whatever their specific need might be. So I don't generally advise businesses that are not my client because I have to have an attorney-client relationship, but sometimes depending on what it is, we can direct them to a certain website. So just like Tammy pointed out, all the wealth of information you can get from just going to the IRS website. Sometimes there are certain websites that I can point employers to that are, through the EEOC or the Illinois Department of Human Rights, for example. So it is often a very specific type of issue, and from there I can determine whether there's a free resource or a referral service, for example, through the sometimes if there's a need for pro bono attorney, then and it's not something that I can handle, then like the Chicago Bar Association is a contact for being able to provide or find a resource for pro bono services.
Thank you, Juanita. And so this next question is specific to marketing and business development. And I'll ask Yvette, then Blanca. How has marketing and business development changed, and what are the new ways to promote and grow your business?
Yeah,
Yvette?
that's a very great question. What we've seen at the beginning of the pandemic was that business had to quickly mobilize and digitize their business. While the city and the state and pretty much the US and the nation was closing down, businesses were forced to quickly adapt technology and digitize their business, especially here in Little Village where you have over 100 restaurants. They quickly had to think of different ways to market their business, and they quickly did that by digitizing their menus, for example, using free social media, which we all love. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and even now TikTok, which is short videos that you can record, but really just having a social media presence, leveraging some of the free products that are out there like Google My Business, and asking folks to leave feedback so that it would boost kind of like the level that you reach in Google My Business. So if someone was to Google something nearby, you would be at the top of the line. But just really quickly to digitize the majority of your business and get pretty tech savvy and creating somewhat of a free marketing campaign, and while others definitely connecting with different marketing and branding businesses to kind of recreate themselves and pivot their business, implement new logos and designs, which I was really happy to see that some of our small businesses that during this time, they did go back and work on their business profiles. They went back and looked at policies and procedures. They went back and looked at their marketing and branding. So it was a perfect opportunity for them to kind of reinvent themselves. So that's what I would add to that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yvette. How about you, Blanca? What would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much to add to what Yvette just said. I think we are living in a time where thankfully the access to the digital platforms can be very helpful to businesses. Otherwise, can you imagine how can a restaurant keep selling their products or their services? So I think those clients and those businesses who are taking advantage of converting into or having a stronger presence in the digital landscape, I think they are finding out that can be a line of business that they will keep, right? Even when we go back to normal fully, they will still keep this digital marketing and this digital way of delivering services. So yes, not much to add there. And again, we offer trainings and we offer workshops that help businesses transfer and do that transition into this new way of marketing.
Thank you, Blanca. Yeah, I've learned that TikTok, it's not just dance moves that is going on. There's a lot of knowledge and great content and businesses that are being promoted on there. So it's about being open to these tools and open to learning them and getting comfortable with them. And I think for sure, a lot of businesses have done exactly that. And if you're not, you want to, right? You want to start looking into that and developing either it's a social media strategy or digital strategy, right? As part of your business plan. It's definitely the way of today and in the future. And so my next question, I'll pivot over to Juanita, specific on the legal end. We'll get ready for a couple questions here shortly. I know there's a few coming in. So Juanita, what are some of the serious legal challenges? And I know you mentioned a few earlier, but how can, from those challenges, business owners recover?
Well, as I started the conversation earlier, there's considerations, at least with in my practice areas, on the business side as well as the employment side. So, but it all ties into your operation. There's a lot of overlap between business and employment, and that's why my practice is what it is. So on the business side, again, you want to make sure that you know what your contracts say, and if they're and truly, no one should be getting their contracts off of Google. They really should be making sure that they have legal review. I can't say how many times, even before the pandemic, I've had clients come to me with just terrible agreements that are very one-sided, or where they assume that certain things were in there because they thought that they had, a good relationship with the other side, and it comes down to what's the black and white, and within the four corners of that agreement. So whatever else you intended or anything like that. So it's always a very important to know what your contracts are about and have legal review of your contracts. It's better to get advice before you enter contracts so that you can start your business off on the best foot. And that is very important for our entrepreneurs. Please do not just sign whatever somebody sends you, even though they say that's their agreement. There is always an opportunity for to negotiate. I don't care how fancy their agreement looks. I've negotiated all kinds of agreements, even, on behalf of artists with, a record label, and they want to, basically chop the artists off at the knees and make it so that then they own them. And the artist is really wanting to do business, right? And they feel like, oh, well, we need this for our business, so we have to sign. I see that always in the Latino community, that they feel like, well, we need to hurry up and sign because we need to get business done. And especially for Latinas, you might be seen as being more difficult or whatnot. All minority-owned businesses, really, it's like, oh, well, here, you should just sign what we give you. No, you don't have to just sign what you're given. You should have legal review. So first and foremost, that's very important. Have legal review before you enter your agreements. Get some legal advice. Maybe you pay a couple thousand up front, but the tens of thousands that you're going to pay later on is going to be significant. And sometimes, depending on the agreement, sometimes you're paying tens of thousands up front, but that might be because there's millions of dollars that are going to be gained, right? So it's very important not to be, penny wise and pound foolish. And you also you enter the playing ground more level, right? You want to enter a level playing ground. There's already a number of obstacles that are out there. So you want to make sure, from a business standpoint and contractual standpoint, that you're putting your best foot forward for yourself. Obviously you want a profitable business, but if you have employees, you want to make sure that you're able to pay them right. So it's very important. And you also don't want the interruptions that come later because you entered into a bad agreement. And that, if anything, costs so much money later on, as far even as time and your attention and your focus. So you kind of want to be able to go to bed at night and know that your agreements are in proper order. So that's what I have to say on the business side. On the employment law side, you want to make sure that you know what the employment laws are and how they might apply to your business. And for example, in the state of Illinois, now all employers, even if you just have one employee, have to provide sexual harassment training. Now I provide a number of customized trainings for my clients. I have some national clients that I provide, that I've created trainings for and have been able to, provide their workforce trainings on avoiding discrimination, harassment, and retaliation lawsuits. And that's a big topic because, you all of a sudden you get this, this disgruntled employee who's claiming that they were discriminated against. And so how do you make sure that you have the controls in place? Well, for one, you want to make sure that you have compliant policies, because your policies are your first line of defense, and they also set the culture for your business. And you can't just run around and deal with all your employees at the same time, usually, because you have to make sure that things are moving. So you want to have in place policies, and you want to make sure that your workforce is properly trained, that they understand those policies. But for example, with respect to the sexual harassment training that now is required, at a minimum, folks can go, can Google the Illinois Department of Human Rights, and they can find that there is at least some, basic training on there, and complete that, so they can at least check that box for purposes of compliance. So compliance does involve a lot of box checking, but it also can involve, just like in business, on the business side, best practices. So when you put in place these best practices, your business has a better opportunity to be successful and not have the interruptions that result when you have a lack of proper policies, or you didn't even know what compliance was, or you're just kind of shooting from the hip. Well, how do you end up with a discrimination lawsuit? It's because you're treating your employees differently. Well, if you had this person make this decision and this person make this decision, and no real organized way for determining if somebody, for example, needs a reasonable accommodation or can't get the vaccine or what have you, then you end up facing possibly a lawsuit or a claim under the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? So you want to make sure that you understand those areas like religion and disability that require you to engage in the interactive process, right?
Okay.
And that's when you're dealing
So
with.
I think we got to wrap it up, so because I know
Sure.
we're running out of time. I think a lot of great insights, a lot of great information. I do want to see if anybody on the panel can answer Heather's question regarding the programs offered to Hispanic Americans that President Biden recently announced. So if anybody has any insight, please, let's share. And before we do that, to Juanita's point, to everybody that just mentioned regarding resources, and something that's worked really well, not only for the organization that I lead day to day, but also recently being a co-founder to a startup, Shenex, which is a fintech geared to help Latinas close the wealth gap that currently exists. So my co-founders being Olga Camargo and Juan Carlos Avila, investment fiduciaries. Through ASE, we've been able to build relationships with professionals in the legal field, in HR, and so when we need an IP attorney to help us with our trademark, we go to our trusted network, a relationship that we built to say, hey, we're going into this, we're not sure, can you help us read the contract? So it's our leveraging organizations like ASE, like Latina Style, like these organizations represented here, to build relationships with subject matter experts, individuals like Juanita, that you can, get counsel and advice on as you're, launching, starting up your businesses, or you're through your businesses, to get that additional insight. So can anyone answer this question regarding the initiative President Biden just announced? I haven't seen anything. I don't know if anybody. Yvette, I see.
So I included in the chat, I'm happy to connect with Heather one-on-one to talk about any kind of assistance or pandemic relief that can potentially help her. Right now, the SBA has various programs. I touched a little bit on the chat about the economic injury disaster loan, which is a loan, which is a 30-year loan that small businesses can apply for their operating expenses. And it's geared to small businesses. And then the Back to Business that will open next week is for small businesses that haven't been able to access, PPP, SVOG grants, and they will be prioritized. So this is a really good program, the Back to Business. And our organization here at the Little Village Chamber of Commerce actually has received training on how to fill out the application. So we're more than happy to sit with folks one-on-one and walk them through the entire process. The requirements are pretty flexible, and the required documents is pretty much bank statements, your taxes from 2019, 2020, and you can secure anywhere from a $5,000 to $150,000 grant. So happy to connect with folks one-on-one and kind of walk them through the process. I included my email in the chat too, so feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. And we got to wrap it up. So last quick rapid fire. Whoever wants to go first, a book, a podcast, a resource, a quote that you want to share just in a second or two. Yvette.
For me, resources, reach out to your chambers of commerces, your assist agencies. They will walk you, support you, and advocate on your behalf if you're a small business.
Blanca.
I would invite everyone to visit our website. We have all the resources there. So wbdc.org.
Thank you. Juana.
Sure. So my firm's website is www.bbdc.org. lawat.jbr.com, LAWAT.jbr.com. I'm happy to point you in any direction that you might need, depending on what your need is, if my firm can't help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Tammy.
Remember irs.gov. You can always search for any information. And I just want to mention news release 2021-165 has great information in regards to the third and fourth quarter in regards to employee retention credit. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Patty.
I would just say, please explore our small business center in www.wellsfargo.com. It's free of charge. There's a lot of great tools, and do avail yourself of any and all resources that are out there to help you survive and thrive in the coming months. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you to all of our panelists in this wonderful conversation.